So it's time to get to, I think it's everyone's favorite things to do within Azure, and then is to create virtual machines. Now, if you are on the home page, so I'm just going to quickly click on the home page, then we can just click on create resource, and then it's just going to take us to the marketplace. And now, the first item, you can see that the first item there, it's Windows Server 2019 data center. We can also see that there's Ubuntu server as a second item. Now, if you're looking for perhaps for specific images, don't worry, we can go there either to choose our favorite by, and so we can actually go there and then just choose our favorite image that we want to use. So you can also go to the compute section if you click somewhere here. You can see under compute section, then you can see that we have virtual machines and so on. And then here we can also choose our favorite image. For example, we can also choose maybe SQL Server. This is running on in the Windows Server. You can see that it's let me just see. Yeah, there's quite a lot of image. Quite a lot of images here. Okay. So there's even Windows 7 for that matter. Alright, so right now let's go ahead and choose the Windows Data Center. So we're gonna go with Windows Data Center. We can just create virtual machine here. And of course, make sure that you choose your resource group. So I'm gonna go with that AZ1RG, and the virtual machine name. What name can we give this guy? So the first thing that you're going to do is to select a subscription, of course. Now, if you've got only one subscription, you don't really have a choice. Now, make sure that you are creating a virtual machine in the right subscription for, this is where billing goes. All right. Now, you can, if you don't have a resource group, you can create one from here as well. There's like a create new button that you can you can use just to create a new resource group. Okay, for example, I can say maybe create new, and I can just give it a name. Okay, maybe not. Let's just go ahead and give it a name. Maybe I'm just gonna call this AZ new VM. Maybe we can just say AZ104 new VM. Now the next big decision is the region. Now Microsoft does claim to have over 50 regions, of the world, and each individual, just does not have access to all 50, because some of them are government regions, or China regions, or Germany, etc. If you remember, we talked about that in fundamentals. So you're going to have to choose. You have a couple of dozen choices there. So you'll see by default South Africa North is already selected there, so I'm just gonna leave it like that. Now again with regions, I remember, I think in 2020, during 2020, there was crisis because a lot of virtual machines regions were full. Okay, so probably you want to choose something else, maybe West or something, kind of unpopular one. But it does also have an impact on pricing. So it might be a little bit cycle, but if you choose maybe Australia or Japanese or somewhere in, well, in Africa we've got like only two. You're going to pay a little bit more than you if you choose Africa North. Okay, so the pricing might be a problem for you. So you want to choose the region that is the right location with the right price. Okay. Now there's also a concept of redundancy. If we check there, we also have the concept of redundancy. Now, um, let me just see. Now, Africa North does not really support application availability zone, and we talked about that previously. Okay, so if you choose maybe West Europe, and then you could see the availability zones that are there. I think maybe we will talk about availability zones. All right. So the next thing is the image that's going to be chosen. So if we can see, we can actually see all the the images there. So if we go over here, we've got Red Hat, Linux, we've got Debian, we've got Ubuntu 18, LAMP, um, Cent, Ubuntu 14, and so on. Okay. So we just want to go with a Windows. Of course, we can just hit select here. Okay. Was it Gen 1 that I had? I think it's Gen 1, yeah. Because again, you must look at the price. Okay, you must just look at the different prices there. All right. Um, so there's another feature, new feature there, that is, I think it's the idea of spot instance. So now the spot instance is basically you're going to be getting a virtual machine at a cheaper price, but you can get evicted by any time. So that's a problem. So really, it's sort of a flying standby, something like that. So you are getting your seat cheaper, but as long as if someone comes along and paying customer, and paying a maybe a paying customer wants to get their seat, you're going to get booted. Basically, that's how it works. Okay. So you really have, low priority tasks there, and you don't mind getting booted, and you want to save if you want to save some money. All right. So then the spot instance is where to go. Now the next big thing here is the VM size. All right. So it just took my previously used one, which was BS1. You can see it's about 175 a month, 175.60 a month, and it gives a 1 gig memory. That is nothing when it comes to Windows, because we know Windows is heavy on graphics, right? On Linux is perfect. On Linux server, because Linux server doesn't have a graphic user interface, but on Windows this is nothing. Okay, so what we can do, we can see all sizes and see if we can change the size. So maybe think of so the one that was selected was that DS2 for general purpose. You can have two virtual CPUs, and then the RAM is about 7 gig, and the data disk you can attach up to 8. Okay, and the maximum input output operations 6400, and the temporary storage is 14 gigabytes. And but the most important thing is to check how much it's like 2,757 per month. Maybe that is a little bit out of our range. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go with BS2. which is about 4 gigabytes of RAM, and it's gonna cost me about 700 a month. Okay, again we're getting two virtual CPUs here, and the RAM is 4 gig. Again, this is not sufficient for Windows machine. All right, you can't have 4 gig. At least you must be looking at 16 or 8 maybe. Okay, for but depending on what you actually gonna be doing on that machine. All right, so I'm gonna go with B2S, which gives us two virtual CPUs. So remember, when you are on the free account, you must check there. Ooh, this might give us a problem because you're only allowed to have 4 CPUs. So that means you only gonna be able to create one machine. I don't know, probably because you're in a free account. So anyway, um, we're gonna go with B2S, and we'll have the, the admin account. So I'm just gonna use admin user, and I'm gonna provide the password. So the thing is, if you, I just want to warn you when it comes to the sizes. One CPU virtual machines are quite underpowered. All right, so you're going to have a problem booting them up. All right, they're going to be slow. Even this one is relatively gonna be slow, but because we're learning, I think we should be able to see it, but it's still gonna be slow. And half gigabyte of RAM and one CPU is not really powerful for Windows Server. Now, if you are running a Linux machine, for example, maybe you would have a little bit more lag. Okay, so that's why I went with the B2S, which is about 700 a month. But the thing is, we're getting now two CPUs and 4 gigabytes of memory. Okay. Um, Now we do have, don't forget you do have to come up with an administrator username, and don't forget this because again, like I said last time, if you forget it, you might need to delete your machine and then redeploy it. So there's a problem because you must have the admin username. So this is a username that you are going to be using when you log in into your machine using a remote desktop. Um, Now, if you are doing a Linux machine, then you're going to be asked for an SSH private key. Now, the next decision that we need to make here uh, is um, is the ports to open. So if we check there, it's the ports to open. Now, we do have RDP on default. This is a remote desktop. So if you want to turn this to a web server, then you need to have the web ports open, which is port 80 basically. Now for SSH, for Linux it would be SSH, not RDP. So this is a security concern because anytime you have a ports open, so you need to be extra careful. Now if you have an existing Windows license, if you are maybe Microsoft Enterprise customer, then you might be able to repurpose some of your existing license to Azure, and then you can probably select this. So if you've got an existing license, then you can just select that. Like I think I do have a license of Windows Server. All right. Now the next thing is the disk. So let's go ahead and look at the disk. Now we can see here that we are getting, a chosen a premium solid state disk by default for operating system. We could downgrade to a standard solid state or even a standard hard drive or hard disk. This is going to change our selection of the virtual machines and pricing around it. But I'm just going to leave it as SSD unless you really have a reason not to. All right. So relatively new addition to the screen is the encryption. Now, all Azure VMs are encrypted on Azure storage accounts by default, right? So if you want to provide a customer managed key or custom managed key, that's done using what we call a key vault, okay? And you can choose it now in the sign up screen, okay? Now, if we move a little bit, we scroll a little bit down, we have data disk. So data disks are just additional disks that you want to attach. So we have a temporary operating system disk, which we will be like, it's like a C drive, okay? And if you need additional disk as well, then you can create and attach the disk. And depending on the instance type that you choose, there's a limit to the number of, I think that one BS2, was it 8 disk that you can attach, or was it 4? So, but basically there's just a limit to the number of them that you can create. All right. Now going over to the networking, let's move over to the networking. So we do have a section that maybe we cover it tomorrow on networking, but it's going to create a virtual network by default. Okay. If you want to attach these to an existing virtual network, then you should choose that on the drop down. So I suppose we don't have anything there, but we're going to leave all of these to default. Okay, if you want to rename it, you can rename it. Now we also have let me see. All right, so on the basic network security group, we've already chosen the ports on the basic tab. This is just a reconfirmation. You can see that we still have that inbound port of 3389, which is that for RDP. And then we also have, let me just see, and then we've got this option of accelerated networking. This is only for certain instances type, okay, that allows a very high speed connection on two or more machines at the same instance on the same network, but that's not qualified. It's not qualified here because of the virtual machine size that we chosen does not support that accelerated networking. And if we are creating this virtual machine with the intentions to put behind the load balancer, then we can make those selections right there on the screen. Okay, so we do get what's called Azure Security Center for free. Okay, and then we can also upgrade to a higher level of Azure Security Center plan rather. We'll talk about that maybe in another time. Now, there's also going to be logging and monitoring. Okay, so we don't really have any load balancing. Let's just move over here to management. All right. So there is logging and monitoring that we can also do. You can turn this on and off. Okay. We can actually the boot diagnostics we can disable if you want to. because I'm never going to examine the boot diagnostics for a virtual machine. So you might wanna switch that off. And maybe in the development or testing area, you're going to want to do that. All right, but I can leave all the diagnostics off at this point. So we could have this running under its own system manager as well, system management manager identity. Okay, so that is what it's called, the service principal. And then you can also, let me just see, you can also do the auto shutdown. Now, you can enable the auto shutdown in development, especially these types of things that you can start them up and leave them, running and forget about them, and then you're going to end up running up a big bill, you see. So you could also do this. Let's say you can say every time the shutdown is gonna be maybe at 5 p.m. I can just say at 5 p.m. All right, or maybe what time are we finishing today? 14. Maybe we can say at 2 p.m. So this must just shut down at 2 p.m. Okay. So that is the coordinated universal time. So also you don't need to be notified before the shutdown. We can set up, uh, so we don't need the notification for shutdown. So we can just, so the next thing, you can also set up the backup from here. Okay, we're going to have the whole section of a backup, and I think we're going to talk about that also, but I'm not going to touch it right now. um, Let me just see. So also, um, now if we go next, now here, this section is allowing you to run scripts. So if you have a startup, where it's going to install some software and do some configurations, you can have a VM extension that will run scripts. So if it's a Linux machine, maybe there is a thing called Cloud Init, okay, in Linux, which is for Linux. All right. So we can run this what's called Azure Dedicated Host as well, okay, which is basically just a dedicated hardware that is kind of expensive, but instead of running it as a virtual machine with other customers on the on the same machine, you get your own machine. All right, so it's like a dedicated, remember here, maybe we some sort of sharing, we create a virtual machine, and then in one computer you've got other 100 virtual machines that are actually running on the host. Okay, so but it's kind of expensive. Now there's the whole thing here about separate thing. Okay, now another thing that we have, is the proximity placement groups. Now it's almost the opposite of availability set. Now availability set on the basic tab put machines far enough apart so that one of them, if it goes down, the other one is not affected. You see, now these proximity groups are opposite, where it's going to put the resources physically closer to together in the same region. All right, that would be if I need two machines. If I have two machines, then I need them to communicate with each other, and perhaps you want to get the absolute lowest amount of latency communication between them. All right, so you'll want to put them physically closer to one another or together. Now that is a sort of opposite availability to availability set. Okay, this is if the region goes down or the data center goes down, you're going to get multiple servers going down. Now the default here, I think this might not be available. Yeah, so I don't have anything available here. Okay. Um, so well, we're not gonna touch this unless, of course, you really need to do that. Now let's move on tagging. Now tagging is important. So if you want to set this up maybe as a dev box or a prod box, you can a production box, you can just set some metadata here. Okay, so this is on the last screen. You can get then you get to review and then create the machine. And then if it does a validation, it's green, it's all good. And then if it's red, you've got an error. So it's basically just telling you the final price and how much it's gonna cost you per hour. Okay. Um, all right. So let's go ahead and do the validation. So again, there is that notification about the port that I'm about to open or that I opened. So this is gonna cost me about 0.95 cents per hour. So my validation has passed. Hmm.
I heard you mentioning that the tags were very important. Did you add anything?
No,
Oh,
you can add them if you want to. Uh, but they're just gonna help you with billing. Basically, you know what you are billed for. So another thing that we'll look at is basically IRM templates. We're gonna cover those a little bit later. So that's just a JSON file that represents your solution and just basically just do other things in terms of managing, and we'll just cover that ARM templates later on. But at this point we're done. We can just create and so this is gonna take about 3 or 4 minutes just to deploy because Microsoft is pretty good with creating virtual machines these days. They even have some on standby basically. So if it happens to if I happen to choose the right VM type with the right disk, they're just going to grab one of their existing VMs, and I can just get that within a minute or two. But if it's not there, then it's going to take them less than 10 minutes, I think. Okay, so hopefully we will have a virtual machine created.